Hi guys, massive scandal which media completely ignores. Republicans from House Oversight Committee published emails between leading virologist and infamous Dr. Fauci, who is a synonym of the science in the United States. Basically, we have a highly respected scientist who argued that COVID was coming from the lab in discussions with Dr. Fauci around February 1, 2020. But then something mysterious happened. On February 4th, the majority of the same scientists sent an article to Nature magazine where they argued that COVID is 100% of natural origin and we have a scientific consensus. The fact that they thought completely opposite just 3 days ago was completely ignored and not even mentioned. And none of the issues pointing out to lab leak theory was addressed anyhow. Nonetheless, that Nature article was successfully published and used to suppress all the lab leak theory for at least a year. Let's look a bit closer because it's mind-blowing. Here is the list of the guys who signed that paper. The emails we have are mostly confidential and they are not available publicly, but the members of the House were able to see them on camera, meaning that they were able to see the unedited versions of them, and then they were able to copy them with their handwriting. The first email is from Jeremy Farrar, who is a scientist and director of Health Charitable Wellcome Trust, to Dr. Fauci and his boss, NIH Director Francis Collins. It's basically a summary of the Zoom call with the leading virologist, which happened just a day earlier. Here we have a leading scientist, Mike Farzan, saying that he was bothered by the fear inside and had a hard time explaining that as an event outside the lab, though there are possible ways in nature but highly unlikely. Then he's arguing that it's likely that the virus was not directly engineered in the lab, but rather was made through a continuous passage of the virus through humanized cells, which is a common method in the lab to increase the evolution and generate the most infectious virus. Lastly, he stated that he's 70-30 or 60-40 in terms of lab leak vs natural origin. This guy is an honest scientist and he didn't sign that Nature paper. But we have another guy, Robert Gary. I really can't think of a plausible natural scenario where you can get from a bat virus or one very similar to it to COVID, where you insert exactly 4 amino acids 12 nucleotide that all have to be added at the same time to gain this function. That and you don't change any other amino acids and S2? I can't figure out how this gets accomplished in nature. Do the alignments of the spikes at the amino acid level. It's stunning. Of course, in the lab, it would be easy to generate the perfect 12 base insert that you wanted. Another scenario is the progenitor of COVID was a bat virus. Was the perfect furin cleavage site generated over 3 evolutionary times. In this scenario, RH13, the Wuhan Institute of Virology virus, was generated by a perfect deletion of 12 nucleotides, while essentially not changing any other S2 amino acids. Even more implausible in my own opinion. That is the big if. You were doing gain-of-function research, you would not use any existing clones of SARS or MERS. What you would do is close a bat virus that had not yet emerged. Maybe then pass it in human cells for a while, look for RBS, then you reclone it and put the mutation you're interested. One of the first polybasic cleavage site. This guy is among the authors of that Nature paper, and he somehow changed his mind just after 3 days. Obviously in that article none of these concerns were even mentioned. What is even more interesting, Robert Gary became an extreme proponent of natural origin theory. When the last year lab leak theory finally returned to the public discussion, he made a 1.5 hour long podcast explaining why it's 100% of a natural origin. By the way, Robert Gary got a huge grant from Dr. Fauci right after the initial publication, but this is probably not related to this case. Let's continue with emails. Another one is from Jeremy Farrar to Fauci on February 4th. Eddie Holmes, 60-40 lab, I'm 50-50. Edward Holmes is another guy who signed this infamous paper. We can only congratulate this guy because recently he got an award of 250,000 Australian dollars for telling the truth about COVID. Another email is from Andrew Rambaud on February 2 to Fauci and other scientists. I'm also agnostic on this. I don't have any experience in laboratory virology and I don't know what is likely or not in that context. From a natural evolutionary point of view, the only thing here that strikes me as unusual is the furin cleavage site. This guy is another author of that article. In addition to all this, for a long time we have another email leak from another author of this paper called Christian Andersen to Dr. Fauci from February 1st. Here Christian says, Eddie, Bob, Michael and myself all find genome inconsistent with expectation from evolutional theory. Eddie is probably Edward Holmes, Bob is probably Robert Gary, and Michael is Michael Farzan, the only guy who haven't signed that paper. Clearly, something happened to make scientific community to change its mind. And let me be clear again, in that article there is nothing addressing any issues raised in these emails. Nor there any proof that COVID was of a natural origin, just a bunch of nonsense around furin-cleavage side, that it's not really optimal, that it could be better, and that's why it's not from the lab. So, some of the guys in that email discussions were actually not happy about lab leak origin. One of these are actually very famous scientist Ron Fourier. He said the following: the accusation that nCoV 2019 might have been engineered and released into the environment by humans, accidental or intentional, would need to be supported by strong data beyond a reasonable doubt. It is good that this possibility was discussed in details with a team of experts. However, further debate about such accusation would unnecessarily distract top researchers from their active duties and do unnecessary harm to science in general and in science in China in particular. Well, I don't know what was the motivation of that guy, but NIH Director Francis Collins wrote to Farrar and Fauci on February 2 the following. Through the argument from Ron Fourier and Christian Drosten are presented in more forcefulness than necessary, I'm coming around the view that a natural origin is more likely. But I share your view that a swift convening of experts in confidence-inspiring framework, WHO seems really the only option, is needed, or the voices of conspiracy will quickly dominate, doing great potential harm to science and international harmony. Swift convening of expert confidence-inspiring framework is an amazing Orwellian term simply meaning let's somehow convince all the leading scientists that it is of a natural origin and then publish a debunking article and let WHO to promote it. And they did it, as you know. We don't have any details of how it was done, but all these guys eventually got some grants, so this might give us a little hint. And honestly, it's a big disgrace for science, and this is the reason why people don't trust the scientists anymore. Basically, Fauci and Collins are personally responsible for that many anti-vaxxers we've got these days. And I'm still amazed that Fauci is still a director of NIAID instead of being locked up in the jail for covering up the Chinese mass genocide. There is a clear evidence that experiments in Wuhan were able to generate COVID-19, and also we have a clear evidence that all these experiments were sponsored by EcoHealth Alliance, and EcoHealth Alliance were sponsored by Fauci. So it's a problem. If you want to know more about that, there are 2 more videos on this channel about lab leak theory, just check them out, and thanks for watching, don't forget to like and subscribe, and see you next time. Bye!